So let me begin by saying that I'm only going to cover the first two movies in this video. They're both incredibly different and embody everything I love about the franchise. The last two films were good, but I think everything I would really want to praise about them comes from Catching Fire. Anyway, let's just talk Hunger Games. The Hunger Games was the first book-to-movie phenomena that shook my high school. I mean, I jumped on the bandwagon of Twilight hate because I was a freshman and that's what you do, and we still had the last few Harry Potter movies to dress up for. But The Hunger Games was something different. It wasn't nerdy to love this series, it was normal. More than normal, it was almost expected. Joss Hutcherson fangirls rushed through the hallways wearing Capital Brand eyeshadow to have mid-morning debates with my English teacher over Team Peeta versus Team Gale. That was my daily life. I saw the first movie 4 times in theaters with various friend groups, and I was so on board. The wonderfully multi-dimensional supporting cast, the redonk sets and costume design, and Jennifer Lawrence being a gosh dang great actress, The Hunger Games spoke my love language. I wasn't as ride or die as some of my friends, but the hype was real. Now that a few years have passed, however, I appreciate these movies in a totally different light. They're risky, bold, and better than just a few months people memed,
I volunteer! I volunteer! I volunteer as tribute!
The director of the first film, Gary Ross, was one of the oddest directorial picks I've ever seen. This was a guy who hadn't worked in almost 10 years. I mean, sure, his first 2 movies were Oscar-worthy, so people knew he could make a thing, but Seabiscuit looks nothing like the post-apocalyptic teen thriller shown in the books. You'd think Lionsgate would go after someone with a bit more experience, like a Harry Potter alum, or at least someone who had tackled an action film, but they didn't. And honestly, I'm really glad they didn't, because Ross does an amazing job with the first film. There's a real sense of solemnity. Life is hard, Katniss has no idea what she's doing, and everyone's pretty much sure they're gonna die with the whole world watching. And where someone else might have simply seen a young teenage protagonist and shrugged off any honest moment, Ross lets us feel real struggles in this movie with these long scenes of just talking or staring into the distance. He trusts his actors and treats the problems of teenage love and awkwardness as life or death situations. Because they are. Are the people around you just playing with your emotions? How are you going to make friends if you're angry at everyone? Why are we put into situations beyond our control by people who don't even really know us? Ross is able to do what every great movie about teenagers does. Legitimize the problems of its audience. Rebel Without a Cause, The Breakfast Club, Juno, they all do the same thing, and I love them for it. But Ross doesn't just stop at legitimizing an angsty teenage zeitgeist. He's also able to treat the core premise of arena warfare with a lot of dignity. It's tragic that the games are going on, and instead of the whole battle royale snap between familiar high school behavior and all-out war, we get a slow, panic-inducing march to what will likely be a public execution. This panic goes all the way down to the camera movement itself, and I know a lot of people hated the handheld look in the first film, but I think the cinematography in this movie is the best part. Katniss has to hold her composure for so long, and then, boom, things pop off, and she realizes that she wasn't prepared for this, and people are killing each other. The camera reflects that state of mind perfectly, as well as the rough-and-tumble setting of District 12. The smart camera work doesn't stop there, as we see all kinds of inventive ways to show the mindset of the world visually. Things filmed by the Capitol all come in these 3-panel screens that quickly cut, because Capitol citizens are desensitized and have short attention spans. We get a lot of close-ups whenever Katniss is about to do something violent because those are intimate decisions she's unprepared to make. And there are these long transition montages of inconsequential things, like people eating a meal, and that creates a sort of personality for the world of Panem, and further emphasizes how run-of-the-mill killing children is here. These are conscious, legitimate choices that are pretty experimental for a big-budget young adult novel adaptation. The script also has this funky flavor to it that's really interesting. For example, there are these large swaths of total silence in the actual games, whereas in the book we constantly get Katniss's inner monologue. It makes for some really interesting moments, where if you haven't read the books first, you have no idea what she's really doing until it happens. And while we might be missing a lot of Katniss's thoughts, we do learn a lot of what she knew of the books from side characters, specifically Caesar Flickerman, who is played to perfection by the impeccable Stanley Tucci. We also get some stuff that was never in the book, like the revolt of District 11 and the conversations between Snow and Seneca Crane that really thrust the film into a place that feels larger than just Katniss from the get-go. This is the beginning of a revolution, not the story of a single girl. That being said, it's not the best adaptation ever. There's some clunky dialogue in the first act, and the whole Peeta versus Gale thing is reduced to basically no complexity, and we do miss out on a few great book-only characters. But all in all, it's a pretty dang good movie, and it does things that I haven't seen since. And the sequel is even better. Catching Fire is a tension festival where they fire suffering out from t-shirt cannons. Like, you thought people starving and killing each other was bad? No. This movie shows us that things can always get worse. A lot of the plot lines come straight out of the book, but because this is a film, you feel just how close all the events take place in time. And it gives you a sense of how swift and cruel Snow is when he's pissed. You're constantly waiting for him to drop the other shoe, and when he does, it's never just one shoe. It's a freaking Payless. Hold up 3 fingers, we'll broadcast your execution. Make a dress that spurns the government, we'll beat you to death in front of your friends. Claim the title of Mockingjay, we'll torture you with the same exact symbol before destroying your image and having you murdered for everyone to see. The first time I saw this movie in theaters, it felt like I needed a massage afterwards. And a lot of that, once again, is thanks to the amazing cast. Like, I don't even know who Deborah Zane is, but she better be making a lot of money somewhere. We get to see Effie be human, Peeta feel betrayed, Haymitch drink for a reason, Snow have a sweet side, Flickerman get frazzled, Finnick be selfless, Joanna play mind games, and Gale have some actual significance. And that's a lot of complexity for a lot of different characters, but everyone in this film executes. In my last video, I used Catching Fire as an example of how a shift in tone can make your sequel better. And man, the shift in this movie is subtle but perfect. We still have all the amazing world building, but gone is the roughness, the shaky cam, and most of the youth we caught in the first film. Instead, we're left with a polished, calculated action mystery that doubles as a commentary on hope, loss, power, and rebellion. It's justified because the effects of the Hunger Games has rippled into something completely unintended and different. The post-game season has forced our characters to grow more mature and think of things on a scale bigger than their own lives, and take on roles they never thought possible. Having stable action shots, eloquent conversations, and a duller color palette reflects this transition, and so does the plot. But outside of all this, I think what really separates Catching Fire as a great sequel is the ending. Finishing a movie has got to be one of the hardest things ever. I mean, sure, starting your story with something good is important, and if your middle sucks, then your movie sucks, but I personally feel like the ending's what makes something something. And creating an ending for a sequel that has more depth than the original is an almost impossible task. But somehow, Catching Fire is able to completely one-up the sort of foreboding ending of the first film. How, you might ask? Well, 1, it's an earned ending for the plot. 2, it's an emotional ending for the audience, and 3, it's an unexpected ending for the genre. But let me expand upon that. 90% of cinematic mysteries are completely unsolvable. Oftentimes, vital information is withheld until the last possible second, and then all of a sudden the sleuth decides to let us all in on what they were doing those 4 minutes off screen. I'm not saying it's an inherently flawed way to structure your mystery, but it does force you to hang your movie on other things, like the supernatural-esque intellect of your protagonist, or an engaging relational story. Catching Fire doesn't withhold anything, though. The audience is given all the tools to figure out Katniss's rescue without giving you too much. Tributes are being weird, Haymitch is being weird, Peeta is being weird, and you think you know what's going on, but you're not 100% sure. And then boom! The arrow is fired, and the cherry picker thing happens, and we get this insanely bitter, emotional ending. One that Katniss never saw coming because she was so focused on surviving and saving Peeta. A mission she's failed at, by the way. It's devastating for her, and you feel that devastation as she blames Haymitch before passing out. And right there, that would have been a great place to roll credits. Our protagonist defeated but alive to fight another day. But instead, we get an unexpected scene. Gale, the guy who Katniss is really confused about outside of the apocalypse, wakes her up after the Haymitch debacle. His message of comfort? District 12 has been destroyed, her family has barely made it out alive, and that one line we heard at the very beginning of the movie has paid off.
It must be a fragile system if it can be brought down by just a few berries.
Yes, it is indeed. But not in the way you imagine it.
How should I imagine?
You should imagine thousands upon thousands of your people dead. This town of yours reduced to ashes. Imagine it gone, made radioactive, buried under dirt as if it had never existed, like District 13.
It all comes down to the decision she made at the end of the first film to eat the berries with PETA. And even though she didn't choose this destruction, she indirectly caused it. And you see that in the final shot. I'll tell you what though, regardless of the plot or the characters or whatever, I love this ending because it's so incredibly different from the thousands of other blockbusters out there. When was the last time you saw a PG-13 action film with a female protagonist who was defeated in the third act? When was the last time you saw an ending where someone wept over a perceived betrayal? Not an actual betrayal, but something done in goodwill that truly scars the protagonist. When was the last time you saw a love triangle that made things more complex but didn't take over the movie and was important in its own right? Films like this don't happen. They don't ever happen. This franchise is fun and sad and experimental and tonally amazing and incredibly well acted, and that's why I want more movies like The Hunger Games catching fire.
Okay.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like more, please, I'll be releasing a new episode every month on the 22nd, the most sequel-y of days, so subscribe for that. I got a Twitter where I post updates about the show, fun facts about movies, and other random stuff, so if that sounds like your jam, I got that too. Bye, y'all!